Uh-oh. The last cookie.
You can get a new box of cookies in as fast as an hour with Walmart Express Delivery.
Are you my guilty self-conscience?
No, I'm the voice offering you promo code EXPRESS for free delivery on your first order.
Hey, who ate my cookies?
You mean, these cookies?
Order now. Welcome to your Walmart. Promotion valid for first express delivery order. $50 minimum subject to availability. Restrictions apply.
Springfest at Lowe's means can't miss savings for your home and lawn. Right now, buy 3 bags, get 3 free on Miracle-Gro 3/4 cubic foot all-purpose garden soil. Plus, buy 2, get 1 free on select exterior paint and stain via mail-in rebate. Lowe's, we help, you save. Valid through 4/16, excludes Alaska and Hawaii. While supplies last, selection varies by location. See rebate form for complete list of eligible products. Offer excludes clearance and mist tints and can't be combined with any other offer, promotion, discount, or coupon.
In Ezekiel 18, he rattles off a list of bad folks, and the last thing on the list is, takes advance or accrued interest.
Wow.
Shall he then live? He shall not. Hey everybody, I'm Dan McClellan.
And I'm Dan Beecher.
And you're listening to the Data Over Dogma podcast, where we increase public access to the academic study of the Bible and religion, and we combat that pesky spread of misinformation about the same. And how are things today, Dan?
Good. Things
you just
are,
come off the rugby pitch.
Yes.
I hope you all won.
I'm a never lose rugby player. I've literally never lost a rugby game in my life.
Nice. There you go.
I've never played a rugby game, but yeah. Dan, for those of you listening at home, is referring to the shirt that I'm wearing, which is actually do you want to know why I got this? I'll just briefly. Last year, I went to. You'll recall I went to Mardi Gras with a bunch of friends, and the whole group of us decided that our theme for that entire week that we were there was Spinal Tap, the movie Spinal Tap.
Yeah, there's going to be a new one coming out.
I know. They were literally in New Orleans at the same time that we were there, and we didn't see them, which proves to me that fate isn't real. But yes, for my character, I played Ian, the band manager, and this
that was your
rugby shirt with a leather vest over it. He's inexplicably dressed the entire time.
Yeah.
So. Anyway,
gosh, and it's the colors for the Washington football team. So all I have to say to that is boo. But
this isn't a football shirt, so everything's fine.
Yep. There you go.
All right. Well, today we are going to have some fun. We are going to discuss and we're going to tread, I think, a little bit back onto Dave Ramsey's turf. Because we're getting economic up in here again.
A little bit.
But we're going to be talking about, you actually did a video in your social media recently that set up a question. And the question is, what is this thing that's been prohibited so much in the Bible? And so I'm not going to say what it is. We'll get to it very quickly in the first segment. And then in the second segment, in our chapter and verse, we're going to be talking about the parable of the talents, which I find utterly befuddling, and hopefully we'll shed some light on it. Maybe that light will just further befuddle. I don't know. There might be a mass befuddling.
Yeah, I think we might be able to clear a few things up, but mainly it's going to be muddying the waters and then running away. So
that's as we do.
That's what we do. Yeah.
It's kind of our thing. But let's get on with our first segment, Taking Issue. And the first issue we're going to take, the issue that we are taking, is with something that is prohibited far more in the Bible than any particular kind of sexual act, or orientation. We've talked about how there are no orientations that are prohibited in the Bible. It's prohibited in ways that, in direct ways that you can't say transness is prohibited.
Yeah.
Or abortion. Like, this is hit so many times. What are we talking about?
We're talking about usury, which is a word that I don't know that I ever heard it before I joined the LDS Church. And then on occasion you would hear, the word usury, which is kind of old-fashioned, but, Latter-day Saints are old-fashioned, and they still, for some reason, and yes, I know the reasons, still use the King James Version of the Bible, despite my best efforts.
Right.
And there were a lot of them.
Keep trying.
But yeah, usury is something I don't think a lot of people are aware was a huge deal, not only in the Bible, but within early Christianity, up to the Reformation and even since. And overwhelmingly, it was vehemently condemned by an awful lot of folks. But I want to start way back in the before times in the Hebrew Bible, where we have a handful of prohibitions. We see this in Exodus, we see it in Leviticus, we see it in Deuteronomy. It is and usury has come to refer to like the exorbitant charging of interest, like charging too much interest.
Yeah, we're talking about lending and then charging interest on a loan.
Right. In the Hebrew Bible, it seems to refer to charging any interest at all. And
just
in early
any?
Christianity,
Oh, okay.
Yeah, any interest at all. It wasn't like, well, once you're up to 8 1/3%, you're okay, but anything above that, we cut your hands off. No, that's that's a later developed idea. In the Hebrew Bible, it's any interest at all. But you have in Exodus 22, this is the covenant code. I and other scholars think this is probably the earliest legislative layer that we have in the Hebrew Bible. Chapter 22, verse 25, if you lend money to my people, to the poor among you, you shall not deal with them as a creditor. You shall not exact interest from them. And then we have very similar things going on in Leviticus and Deuteronomy. You shall not,
and that's very clear. Like that's not, you shall not exact a lot of interest.
Yeah.
That's just any interest.
Any interest at all. And in Leviticus, do not take interest in advance or otherwise make a profit from them, but fear your God, let them live with you. This is talking about the poor. You shall not lend them your money at interest taken in advance or provide them food at a profit. So that's Leviticus 25, verses 36 and 37. Deuteronomy 23:19, you shall not charge interest on loans to another Israelite, interest on money, interest on provisions, interest on anything that is lent. Now, there is an allowance charging interest on loans to non-Israelites.
Right. Yeah, so that's pretty clear. You pick up on that pretty quickly, is that like it repeatedly says to our people, to my people, or whatever.
Right. And the idea here is protecting the well-being and the equity, the social stability of the Israelite people. This is about protecting the Israelite people. And then we have in Ezekiel 18 a handful of passages. We have what's known as a vice list. This is more popular in like Greco-Roman literature, where it's like everybody sucks who does A, B, C, D, E, F, G, all the way to double Z. This is what Paul is doing or pseudo Paul is doing in a lot of places. But in Ezekiel 18, he rattles off a list of bad folks, and the last thing on the list is takes advance or accrued interest.
Wow.
Shall he then live? He shall not.
Oh, wow. So
death penalty.
Death penalty.
According to Ezekiel. He has done all these abominable things. He shall surely be put to death. His blood shall be upon himself. And then after that, it talks about the righteous person withholds his hand from iniquity, takes no advance or accrued interest, observes my ordinances and follows my statutes. He shall not die for his father's iniquity. He shall surely live. So, and you have in Ezekiel 22, these are the things that are mentioned one after the other. Takes bribes to shed blood. You take both advance interest and accrued interest, and make gain of your neighbors by extortion, and you have forgotten me, says Adonai God.
Wow.
So they're pretty emphatic about this.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like they're pussyfooting around this thing.
No, they're not being shy.
They're coming in strong. They're coming in hot.
Not bashful. Guns hot. And then you have a couple places in the Psalms where you have reference to people who are good because they do not lend money at interest and do not take a bribe against the innocent. Those who do these things shall never be moved. And then one who augments wealth by exorbitant interest gathers it for another who is kind to the poor, which is kind of contrasting the good against the bad.
Right.
But so Hebrew Bible, firmly against interest. You have 12 occurrences of the word neshech, which is the term for interest, every single one of them condemnatory toward the practice, as long as it's in-house.
Right.
We don't do this to our own people, because what does it do? It makes the poor poorer, makes the wealthy wealthier, makes the poor poorer, and we're not going to do that to our own people. And this gets picked up in the New Testament. Really only talks about interest a couple of times. Once is in the parable that we're going to be talking about here shortly.
We'll get to that. Yes.
Yeah, we'll get to that. And then there's another reference in, I believe it is Luke 6. Luke 6:34 through 36. Even if you lend to those from whom you expect repayment, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners, expecting to be repaid in full, but love your enemies, do good to them, and lend to them, expecting nothing in return. Now, the idea here might be a little, this might be a rhetorical exaggeration. This might be hyperbole. Lend money and don't expect to be repaid. But I think the idea that people are lending money and expecting not only to be repaid, but to make a profit off of that, I think those people are, as the great poet once said, right out.
But I don't see any reason to assume that it is hyperbole. To me, it feels like it comports with a lot of what Jesus had to say about giving to the poor, not being rich. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, when it comes to the poor, it's very clearly sell all that you have, give it to the poor.
Right. So it seems like it would make sense to me to say, if you're going to lend, just don't expect to get it back. If you get it back, great, but don't expect anything in return. That seems reasonable to me to hear from Jesus. I know that a lot of people would not like that. I know a lot of people who want, who are asked for loans would not like that, but that makes sense as an idea to me.
Yeah, and we live in a world where the financial system that holds our world up is built on interest. I think there's an estimated somewhere around $1 trillion is made on interest. Between $500 billion and $1 trillion is made on interest in the United States. So that's just a part of our world these days. Anciently, not so much. There's the Council of Nicaea, we talk about this a lot, about how, the main controversy they were talking about was the Arian controversy. There was also this little matter of how we determine the date of Easter so that, people can figure it out for themselves. They can stop hassling us. And then there were a bunch of canon laws, which I think some people confuse for talking about the biblical canon, but has nothing to do with the Council of Nicaea. Dan Brown. Nothing to do with the Council of Nicaea, but I think we've mentioned the very first one. I think it's the very first one at the Council of Nicaea was basically prohibiting anyone who had castrated himself from being part of the clergy. Because that was popular back then.
Okay.
But another one is prohibiting the clergy from charging interest on loans, and we have this statement. For as much as many enrolled among the clergy, following covetousness and lust of gain, have forgotten the divine scripture, which says, he has not given his money upon usury. That's Ezekiel 18. And in lending money, ask the 100th of the sum. The Holy and Great Synod thinks it just that if after this decree anyone be found to receive usury, whether he accomplish it by secret transaction or otherwise, as by demanding the whole and one half, or by using any other contrivance whatever for filthy lucre's sake, he shall be deposed from the clergy and his name stricken from the list. So basically, and they start at even 1%, you're out, you're gone, defrocked.
And they didn't impose this on Christianity as a whole. This was
Not
imposed
yet.
on. Oh, okay, but so that was just about the clergy.
That was just about the clergy, yeah. But then we get to the Second Lateran Council, which is many centuries later. It's extended to pretty much everyone. And then the third Lateran decree, I think this is from 1179. We therefore declare that notorious usurers should not be admitted to communion of the altar or receive Christian burial if they die in this sin. Whoever receives them or gives them Christian burial should be compelled to give back what he has received and let him remain suspended from the performance of his office until he has made satisfaction according to the judgment of his own bishop. It is, and they begin by saying, nearly everywhere the crime of usury has become so firmly rooted that many, omitting other business, practice usury as if it were permitted and in no way observe how it is forbidden in both the Old and New Testament.
Wow.
And then in 1311, the Council of Vienne straight up condemns it as heresy.
Okay. Now, at this point, are we still talking about lending with any interest, or have we gotten to interest as like onerous interest?
Any interest.
Okay.
And it's not until I think in the 16th century that we get a definition of usury. The Fifth Lateran Council says, "For that is the real meaning of usury, when from its use a thing which produces nothing is applied to the acquiring of gain and profit without any work, any expense, or any risk." So any attempt to try to make money without any work, any expense, or any risk, in other words, lending money so that you get it back and then some, it defines as usury.
Wow.
But we get, if indeed someone has fallen into the error of presuming to affirm, and I've never seen this word before in my life, pertinaciously, that the practice of usury is not sinful, we decree that he is to be punished as a heretic.
Wow.
Yeah, and they condemn the secular laws that allow usury.
Now, so at this point, we're getting to the time period in which I first learned about usury, which is because I studied Shakespeare, and so I had to figure out. I was in a production of Merchant of Venice,
yeah,
which centers around a Jewish lender who they had to go to, who they despised and they reviled because he was Jewish, but they had to go to him because they
only man in town, yeah.
They needed money, and that's when I learned about the fact that in that period, Christians were not allowed to lend,
right,
for profit, and so and because it was considered low, and because it was the fact of the matter is that Jewish people in those centuries in Europe had been relegated. They weren't allowed to participate in sort of proper, good, upstanding jobs. So this was sort of what was left to them.
Yeah.
And they were the only ones who were allowed to do it.
Yeah. And because Christians were unilaterally prohibited from it, but for Jewish folks, the Old Testament only says you're not allowed to do it for your fellow Israelites.
Right.
They're permitted to loan at interest to non-Israelites. So they become the only game in town for Christians who need to borrow money. And yeah, they were relegated to, and this is physically, economically, socially, in every way, they were relegated to the dregs. And I went. You can go on a tour if you ever have the privilege of having extra time on your hands in Oxford. You can go on a tour of the Jewish quarter of Oxford. Well, they'll take you around and they'll show you that Jewish folks live downhill from the tannery and from the processing and all that, and so they were basically just had filth running through the ghetto that they were relegated to,
right.
And I always forget the name of these places, is where they have lots of plants and flowers and trees.
It's called a garden.
Yeah, but a big one that you can visit, that you pay to go into. Oh my gosh.
A botanical garden?
Botanical garden. Good grief.
Yeah.
I've been there multiple times. The botanical garden in Oxford, one of the reasons that this part of Oxford is so fertile in terms of growing things is because it is constructed over the but the medieval Jewish graveyard.
Oh,
so,
wow.
And they have a sign out front that explains this. But they are the tax collectors, they are the rent collectors, they are the money lenders, and obviously, since they're charging interest, the Christians grow to hate them. They put them in that position, and then they said, "We hate you for this."
Right. And it does seem to be like that's that never gets expunged. Like, to this day, anti-Semitism largely centers around, the money that Jews have and the power that they're hoarding because of all of the money and the blah blah blah. And like
they get written into Harry Potter as the money lending whatever
the trolls or the gnomes or whatever they are. I mean, it's and I think a lot of the people that are participating in that sort of hatred of these people don't even realize that the root of all of that goes back to when their own people put the Jewish people into that position.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's
a little yuck.
It's incredibly yuck. And if you want to really just be horrified, which most
and I
people
do.
don't.
Always.
Like, don't go look at the interactions between Christians and Jewish communities in the medieval period in like Spain and Portugal and stuff like that. Like, it was awful stuff. Like, and that's kind of the seedbed for the development of concepts of racism and race as a question of skin color. A lot of it comes down to Jewish and Muslim folks. They have different skin color from us. We're good, they're bad. And that's kind of how the notion that race is something about skin color develops. And but that's not what this segment is about. We're talking about usury, but we have Christians are, trying to hold themselves to this standard while having a little relief valve. They have relegated Jewish folks to this relief valve, and then they hate them for it. And so these days, an awful lot of anti-Semitism is rooted in these very old stereotypes that were forced upon Jewish communities. And, you have your all of the blood libel stuff, I forget exactly what they call it, the notion that Jewish folks would shave the coins down and collect the shavings and all this kind of all these are lies that developed so that Christians could vilify and demonize Jewish folks. But the Christians would come around centuries later.
Wait a minute, not come around to being kind to Jewish people.
No, they would
come around to participating in the interest charging.
Yeah. Do you say data or do you say data?
Ooh.
Here at the Data Over Dogma podcast, we say data. That's the formal position of the podcast.
Yes.
And for the longest time, we thought paying a fortune on monthly data plans was how everybody did it. That was until we found out about Mint Mobile and their premium wireless plans that start at just $15 a month. And I actually have both of my cell phone age-appropriate daughters on Mint Mobile plans, and it works wonderfully, particularly because I get no service at my daughter's high school, and she gets wonderful service. So I'm very grateful for Mint Mobile's wireless service.
I'm sure their teachers love that. Listen, you can say goodbye to overpriced wireless plans, jaw-dropping monthly bills, and unexpected overages. Mint Mobile's going to take care of you. All of their plans come with high-speed data or data, depending on how you like to say it, unlimited talk and text, delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You just use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan, bring your phone number along, and all of your existing contacts, and you get to ditch overpriced wireless and get 3 months of premium wireless service from Mint Mobile for $15 a month.
No matter how you say it, don't overpay for it. Shop data plans at mintmobile.com/dogma. That's mintmobile.com/dogma.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month, 5 GB plan required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customer offer for first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See Mint Mobile for details.
You know, as I've been getting older, it's been harder and harder for me to stay on top of my nutrition, which has been affecting my health recently, and which has made it so fortuitous that now we're working with Factor, which has chef-made gourmet meals that make eating well easy. They ship right to you. They're dietitian approved. They're ready to heat and eat in just 2 minutes in the microwave, so you can fuel right, you can feel great, no matter what life throws at you.
And this is not your average meal service. We're talking about things like, there's salmon, there's chicken, there's filet mignon if you want it. It is the variety, the possibilities, it's all there. Factor arrives fresh and fully prepared, perfect for any active lifestyle. They've got wholesome smoothies, they've got breakfasts, there's even grab-and-go snacks, there's add-ons. You have a plethora of options.
So eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/dogma50off and use code DOGMA50OFF to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code DOGMA50OFF at factormeals.com/dogma50off to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. Now, it first gets a lot more strict. You have St. Anselm of Canterbury, which was, he said that usury was theft. So, the the taxation is theft, folks. It's like we've heard it before. But it was interest is theft back then. St. Thomas Aquinas condemned it as well. We have Luther and others condemning it. And then, but you mentioned the Merchant of Venice. This is the thing that kind of like begins to turn the tables a little bit. The Renaissance, a lot of that had to do with the fact that there was an awful lot of money and an awful lot of trade going through Italy that was facilitating, the translation of a lot of stuff from Arabic back into Latin and Greek, and it was pumping a lot of life into the Italian economy. And so money lending kind of had to be there if they were going to ride that wave all the way. And so there are cracks in the dam of this Christian attempt to keep usury at bay. And once you get up into the 18th and the 19th centuries, it is, there's very little resistance to as you get the development of the capitalistic society that we have today. It doesn't work really without charging interest. But then you have I don't know if you hear the idiotic conspiracy theories that I hear every day about the Rothschilds.
Yeah.
A lot of that is rooted in loans to the Catholic Church from the Rothschilds.
Oh, interesting.
And
I didn't know that had happened.
Yes. And so, there was there was interest that was being charged as well, which was, and then you've got the Medici Bank lent money to the Vatican in the 15th century, but they overcharged on a lot of stuff as a kind of a replacement for charging interest. There are a lot of ways to get around this.
The Medicis weren't Jewish, were they?
I don't think so, but this was another way that the Vatican found themselves in hot water.
Right.
Because interest was not supposed to work, but they weren't supposed to charge it. But there are a lot of ways that you could get around it. You could charge fees. You could overcharge on other stuff. You could say, well, I'm only loaning you this money if you engage in this other exchange with me where you're going to get raked across the coals. So they had a lot of ways to get around it. And then, by the 20th century, that dam has burst and disintegrated, basically.
They've given up on it entirely. Yeah. If you tell Dave Ramsey, it's not okay to charge interest, I think he'll disagree with you.
Yeah, and this is a part of the renegotiation of the text. Like you can not like it all you want, but this is very clear in the Bible, and early Christians for an awful long time tried to hold fast to this, and then we just decided that we know better and we don't care and we really want this, and so it's gone. And
one of the and I saw, as I was sort of researching this and looking into it, I saw so many different arguments for why it's okay now, and they all seem pretty disingenuous, but a lot of it was like, the old trope of that's just in the Old Testament, and Jesus fulfilled the covenant, and now none of the Old Testament rules apply anymore, which has never made any sense to me because they still love the 10 Commandments and whatever. I don't know. Like it's such a weird case to make, especially considering, like you said, it's also in the New Testament. Like Jesus himself in that Luke 6 passage, or I mean?
Basically says, just give your money away, man.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't expect anything in return. If you're going, and it's encouraging you to lend just without any expectation of even getting it back.
Yeah.
It's fascinating to me. Like you say, the entire way our economy is currently built revolves around this.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's, I mean, I don't know. I guess what I was going to say is that it says we can also look at our world and notice that it is vastly different than the world of the Old Testament and New Testament. We're not subsistence farmers the way most of them were. And
and this is one of the reasons that I point out, like, negotiating with the text. If you want the text to be authoritative, you have absolutely no choice to negotiate with it. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Circumstances change. That's one of the reasons you have to negotiate with it. The abolition of slavery, to the degree that it was abolished, was an awesome thing. And now we have to figure out how to make the Bible work in a world that does not have slavery. But I think just being transparent about the fact that we're negotiating with it. And so if you want to defend interests, like, make a secular case for it and say, we don't really have much of a choice if we want to survive in the world, but that might have some bearing on how emphatically you want to defend other increasingly unpopular and harmful ideologies that you insist the Bible demands you endorse and you defend. So, just be consistent, whatever you're going to do about it. But
that might be asking a lot of some people.
Yeah, and to this day, and Muslims also, my understanding, I had a bunch of comments on that video from members of the Islamic communities saying that they're prohibited from charging interest, and there are banks in the Muslim world where you can get interest-free loans, and evidently there are groups. I don't know how formally they are organized as banks, or if they're affiliated with banks. There are groups that will also make loans to members of the Jewish community that are interest-free. And I'm sure there are different kinds of standards and requirements and criteria and things like that must be met. But there are a lot of groups that still take this seriously, at least for the in-group. I was raised in the wrong group. My mortgage is telling me I'm in the wrong group altogether. Yeah, and one of the interesting things I've seen in folks who defend the validity of interest from a Christian standpoint is saying that it helps mitigate risk, and I've wondered about that, because, like, if somebody's not going to pay back the loan, like, you're not getting the interest either for the most part. Like, we front load a lot of interest. But if you don't even get back the loan the money that you loaned, but also we saw that some of these early Christians were like, oh, you want to try to mitigate risk so that you can make money? That's not good. That's bad. Yeah. And so that argument wouldn't have flown for the medieval Christians. They would have been like, yes, that's part of the problem. You're right. You're trying to make money, but you're not assuming the risks that are involved with trying to make money. You're just putting the risk entirely on the other person and saying, I'm not gonna take any risks trying to make this money.
Yeah. Well, I think that is a good place for us to transition into our next segment, because I feel like the next segment gets into some of these issues and illustrates them in ways that Gosh, I hope I walk away understanding something here. So let's go into our chapter and verse. And the chapter and verse that we're talking about is Matthew 25. And we're deep in parable town in Matthew 25. I went and looked. There's the first part of 25 is the parable of the 10 bridesmaids, which is interesting. And then it transitions directly into what we are looking at, which is the parable of the talents.
Yes.
And we should first start by, I looked up what a talent was. And it was a unit of weight originally, and then became a unit of heavy money. Like a heavy unit.
Well, back then money was basicly a weight.
Right.
You had usually silver or something like that, and it was that much silver.
And a talent is not a small amount. It's
a gigantic amount.
Enormous.
Yeah.
So a single talent was, I think in one thing I saw, it was the equivalent of what was it? It was like years of a standard person's salary.
I think one of them was given like 5 talents. Like that would require, I think it was like working for 84 years every single day,
right,
at a standard day labor wage without spending anything just to get that amount of money. So it's an enormous amount of money. And when we look, and there's a parallel in Luke, but it's like the 10 minas or the 10 pounds, which is another unit of weight.
Right.
And it's a much smaller one. So when Luke tells the story, it's kind of like, let's get real. This is how much he gave him. And
right.
But
because
Matthew
it does seem a little
like,
weird that I mean it's a parable. It's not something we're not supposed to understand this as actually having happened.
Right.
But yeah, it does seem a little weird that like the master's like, here, take $2 million and go see what you can do with it.
I'm going out of town. Here's $5 million. Have a good time.
Yeah, take care of it for me.
And then when he comes back, the sums that are the profits are also astronomical.
Right.
Like in that time period, you can't really make that much money, even with that much money, unless you are like doing some pretty devious and probably questionable buying and selling of property and things like that. You're exploiting people to make that much money.
Let's quickly just sort of tell the story just so that everybody's up on it. So we have a man, and all it says is a man, right? Although
there's a man.
I think that the KJV has an interesting thing. It says, "For the kingdom of heaven is as a man traveling into a far country." Which one of the things that I read was like, they just chucked in that kingdom of heaven thing to try and make sense of to try and make their own kind of sense of this.
Yeah, it's in italics, so it's not there in the Greek.
Okay.
Because I think if you read this and it doesn't say, well, what are we supposed to be comparing? How are we supposed to be understanding this? One might interpret this as a negative thing. And so maybe the King James translators were like, we need to kind of massage them in the direction of understanding this as how heaven is supposed to be. All right, let's add kingdom of heaven into there.
I'm going to question that because I still interpret this as a negative thing. So we'll get to that. We'll get to that. But we've got a man, and he's very obviously a very wealthy man. We can take that from the context clues later on. He's going on a journey, and he summons his slaves and entrusts his property to them. To one, he gave 5 talents, to another 2, to another 1 talent. And it says each according to his ability. I don't know. Does that mean ability to lift it? I don't know what abilities we're talking about here.
I think the idea here is that he knows the economic prowess of his enslaved folks.
He's got
he's got his A team, he's got his JV squad, and he knows what he can give them and expect a return on.
Wow. So then he goes away, and And the two top guys, the guy who received 5 and the guy who received 2, go off and immediately do whatever they do and make money. They both double their money.
100% return, yeah.
Which is crazy. And I kind of want to find out what they did. And then the last guy just goes and buries his talent in the ground and waits for his master to come. Doesn't want to take a risk, doesn't want to get in trouble, seemingly. And so he just does that.
And this is, and interestingly enough, we have some rabbinic literature that's about how the only way for money to be safe is if you bury it. And like, so they even talk about how deep you have to bury it to avoid certain things. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Just make sure you remember where you put it.
Yeah.
Yeah, write it down somewhere. Anyway, so Master comes back.
And it says after a long time.
Okay.
Which is suggests we got to give them time to make this money. It's still ridiculous.
Right.
The amount of 100% return on 5 talents is stupid. But
after a long time, meaning 45 years or something, he comes back, he summons the slaves. He says, "What'd you do?" Number 1 guy says, "I look at this, I doubled. Here's your 10 talents back.
Double your pleasure."
Number 2 guy says, "Here's your 4 talents back. I doubled up 2. He's pleased with both of them. Good and trustworthy slave. You've been trustworthy in a few things." He says, "I'm going to put you in charge of some stuff. Congratulations on your
a few things being billions of dollars.
Yeah.
An awful lot of money.
You're going to be, I think in Luke, don't they get to be like in charge of cities?"
Yes.
So I mean, we're talking about like, you get to be a big shot now.
Yeah.
And then comes the guy who buried his, and he comes in and he says, "Here you go. Here's your talent back." But he doesn't just say that. He says, "Master, I knew that you were a harsh man, reaping where you did not sow and gathering where you did not scatter. So I was afraid, and I went and hid your talent in the ground. Here you have what is yours." And that did not go over well.
Yeah. And this is fair though.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
He's like, "I'm leaving town. I want you guys to make me money while I'm gone."
Right.
And that's reaping where you did not sow, gathering where you did not scatter. Trying to make money without working for it.
And also, clearly, this guy knew that if he comes back empty-handed, he's screwed. So he's not willing to take that risk. He says, "I was afraid, and I went and hid your talent in the ground." And then the master replies, "You wicked and lazy slave, you knew, did you, that I reap where I did not sow and gather where I did not scatter? Then you ought to have invested my money with the bankers, and on my return I would have received what was mine with interest. So take the talent from him and give it to the one with the 10 talents. For to all those who have, more will be given, and they will have an abundance. But from those who have nothing, even what they have will be taken away. As for this worthless slave, throw him into the outer darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth." Now, that has always baffled me. Because here's the thing. The explanation that I always got of this parable is that talents, even though it's a different word, I was always told that talents, what a fun little cognate or whatever.
Yeah. Our spiritual gifts and things.
Right.
Like that.
Yeah. So we're supposed to somehow the master in this story is God or Jesus, and he's given us these, whatever he's given us, whatever gifts he's given us, and that we are to magnify them and sort of blah blah blah. And so when you read on and you hear about that all made sense to me until I read the part about the last slave criticizing the master, and the master doesn't rebuke him and say, "I'm not that." He doesn't say, "That's not true about me." He just says, "Oh, you knew that about me, and so you didn't do anything. Well, you're out." Which says to me that I don't know how we can interpret that as being God in that case. It feels very strange. So talk me through it. Help me understand what am I missing, or are we just going to live in confusion?
Hey, this is Bill Simmons from the Bill Simmons Podcast, here to tell you that Michelob Ultra is giving you the chance to win tickets to the NBA Finals. That's right, the 2025 NBA Finals. Just head to MichelobUltra.com/NBA Finals. Michelob Ultra Courtside NBA Finals Sweepstakes. No purchase necessary. Open to U.S. residents, excluding Maryland residents. 21 up. Begins at 9 a.m. EST on February 16, 2025. Ends on May 5th, 2025. See official rules at MichelobUltra.com/rules for price and details. Message and data rates may apply. Void where prohibited.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Well, so the biggest issue is the fact that a parable, and this comes from a word that means to throw beside or to lay beside. It's a comparison,
Right.
Is that thinking that there is significance to the structure of the parable? Like we're supposed to be comparing one thing to another, but when we put God in the role of the master, we're now thinking, okay, this must be an endorsement some way of what the master is doing, because that's what we're supposed to be understanding God to do.
Right.
And that's a pretty natural way to approach these things, and it is kind of how traditionally we have approached things. But I'd want to bring up Luke 19, which says something peculiar. It tells a parable. He says, a nobleman went to a distant region to receive royal power for himself and then return.
Right.
And a lot of scholars have pointed, so this is not just somebody's, I got a business trip. This is somebody who is making a special trip to go be endowed with political power, which is why he can come back and say, I give you 5 cities, I give you 2 cities.
Right.
And a lot of people point out that this sounds an awful lot like Herod Archelaus, who went off to Rome to be given power to be the leader of this tetrarchy. After his father Herod the Great died.
Okay.
And Herod Archelaus was a bad dude. Like he ends up being deposed for just rank incompetence in 6 CE. And it's after this that we have the need to have a census of the area, which is probably what Luke or whoever wrote the nativity account in the beginning of Luke was confusing with a period during Herod's life. But so in Luke 19, it seems to be suggesting that God is slotted in for this villain, and so it does raise questions about how we should be understanding what the actual structure of the parable is functioning.
Yeah.
Should we be taking this as an endorsement of usury, of the reaction? I think there are problems with that, particularly on the other side of abolitionism as well, because all of these parables are about enslaved people.
Right.
And so
none of them are about how bad it is to enslave anybody.
Right. It's all about, the slave did this, the slave did that, the master went good slave.
Right.
Like that. If you want to understand the structure of the parable to have some moral freight that it's carrying, then what do you do about the fact that it's all about enslaved folks, and the fact that the New Testament consistently represents the ideal relationship you have with God as the relationship of slave to master? So there are a lot of problems with that as well. But additionally, it seems like what's going on in these passages are, one, they don't go back to Jesus. Almost certainly don't go back to Jesus. These are probably traditions that developed later on.
Okay.
And perhaps even
though they are put in Jesus's mouth in the text.
They're put in Jesus's mouth. And it's possible that we have some layers that post-date the original composition of these Gospels as well, particularly because, like when it says the master left and after a long time, this could be kind of this delay of the parousia. Why hasn't Jesus come back yet? Because at the end of Matthew, Jesus tells the people, there are people standing here now who are, will see me coming in the clouds of power and great glory, the second coming, which didn't happen.
Yeah.
And so maybe this is
that
something
you
that
know
was,
of.
Let's not get all preterist on right now, but this could have been a parable that was put in Jesus's mouth even after the original Gospel of Matthew was written, as a way of kind of talking about how we need to be doing our thing until Jesus comes back, because Jesus is going to demand an accounting of us, and so the story could be doing that. Now you found another reading. That,
well, it was sent in to us by a listener whose name
a rather
I forget.
prescient listener.
Yeah, so they sent in a really interesting view of this. It's sort of a liberation theology view, but it takes the idea that it basically makes the third slave the hero of the story. Mm-hmm. And it claims that that the ancient Israelites would have the sort of neo-Christians, the early Christians, would have understood it in a way that that what was happening was that the last slave was the one speaking truth to power, mm-hmm. and that was the right thing to do, and that he was speaking out against the idea of usury and saying you are a usurer, and that's a bad thing, and then he gets condemned, which that kind of sucks. Mm-hmm. He gets thrown out. But one of the interesting things was that this author, and this is from an author named, there's a name associated with it. Andy Wade, I guess, is the one who posted this particular thing. Anyway, one of the interesting parts of his theory is that by burying the talent in the ground, there was also this sort of metaphorical idea that money can't grow in the ground, and that subsistence living is the correct way of living. So what you put in the ground is something, and obviously he uses metaphors that are agrarian metaphors. You reap what you do not sow. You gather where you do not scatter.
Right.
So I think it makes sense to look at the fact that he buried this money in the ground and nothing grew from it, mm-hmm. and that the idea was that but that money itself has no inherent growing value. You have to exploit other people in order for money to grow by itself, and he should have been planting things in the ground that would grow. I don't know. I just found that really interesting, and it made more sense of this parable to me than saying that the master is God. The master then becomes sort of the villain of the parable, even though the outcome for this hero slave is a very bad outcome.
Yeah, and this leads into the parable of the sheep and the goats, where God is sifting through and putting the sheep on one side and the goats on the other, and sheep go to heaven and goats go to hell, as we know from another great poet. But there are. I think that is an interesting reading. I think it certainly helps us to. It's a great interpretive lens to turn on our own selves and our own time, and to think about how we engage with the economy around us, and how so many people treat it as a zero-sum game where to get ahead, other people have to fall behind. We have to step on the necks, grind the faces of the poor in order to secure the bag, and I think that is a great reading. I don't know that it has much legitimacy in terms of trying to understand what the authors or the earliest audiences understood about it. But it is a pickle, because it does seem to do the kinds of things that other parts of the Gospel of Matthew, and here I'm thinking of Jesus's excoriation of the pursuit of wealth and of the Sermon on the Mount. Those things just don't jive with what we have here in the parable of the talents. And I think there's an interesting the Hermeneia commentary volumes on Matthew. It's a 3-volume thing, and it's from about 2005. I think it needs to be updated, but there's some good final thoughts here, because ultimately what this is coming down to is it's trying to tell the story about how the folks who are followers of Jesus need to be productive followers of Jesus and increasing value, quote unquote, not monetary value, but they at least need to be doing something in the world in which they're supposed to be sharing the gospel in order to actually achieve the kingdom of heaven. If they just bury their thing in the ground and they don't go out and engage, then they're going to be one of the unprofitable servants, which, raises questions about about faith alone soteriology in the Gospel of Matthew. But it's basically trying to say it's going to be really good for the people who do the right thing. It's going to be real bad for the people who do the wrong thing. That's kind of the main rhetorical point here. And the author of the Hermeneia commentary volume here says, the parable itself invites misunderstanding. When Jesus, his whole message and his God, becomes the parable's signature and the definition of its contents, such misuse cannot happen. So if we just think about, if we set aside the idea of master, slave, talents, usury, all that, and we just say, okay, Jesus is coming back, we need to be found to have been doing Christian things. Everybody wants to do Christian things till it's time to do Christian things. So if we want to do the Christian things, then misuse cannot happen. Where this was not the case, the parable was misused. The parable of the talents is theologically true only when it speaks of the God of Jesus Christ, who loves people in such a way that they are indebted to him for everything that they are and that they can achieve. It is theologically true only when it speaks of his commission of love, or to love, and of the gifts that are used for that purpose and not for just any human activities. It is theologically true only when it is related to the community of love that Jesus wanted. When it does not speak of these things, it is merely an empty shell of words with which every human activity can be legitimized, such as exploiting other people in order to acquire wealth. And so I think there are ways that we can acknowledge that this is probably an infelicitous metaphor that is being leveraged here, while still trying to understand the point the author was making. Because certainly we can't expect the author of the Gospel of Matthew to have actually endorsed not only usury and exploiting other people for wealth and investing to acquire just obscene amounts of money, right? But also that it would endorse basically the death sentence on somebody who doesn't perform well enough, or an enslaved person who doesn't perform well enough. It seems pretty ridiculous to think of God being in the role of a master of a slave who has control over the life and death of that person. That's not a very Matthean, it's not a very Christian way to approach these kinds of relationships. So I'm going to say I don't know exactly what was going on in the mind of whoever put this here, whether it was the original author of the Gospel of Matthew, somebody coming afterwards, comparing the version of the story that's in the Gospel of Luke even makes it even weirder. I don't know.
Yeah, and the parable in Luke it's clearly the same parable. Yeah, it's just with modifications and differences. Yeah, but it's absolutely the same. But I'm still well, as you say, The water is muddied, and
we take our leave.
I guess that's when we run away. So, thanks for that, I suppose. Listen, friends, if you would like to become a part of making this show happen every week, and if you would like to especially hear more of us, get bonus episodes, or get early access to an ad-free version of every episode, you can go and become a patron over on patreon.com/dataoverdogma. You can also write to us at contact@dataoverdogmapod.com. And other than that, we'll just talk to you again next week.
Bye, everybody.
Data Over Dogma is a member of the Airwave Media Network. It is a production of Data Over Dogma Media, LLC, copyright 2025, all rights reserved.
As a longtime foreign correspondent, I've worked in lots of places, but nowhere as important to the world as China. I'm Jane Perlez, former Beijing bureau chief for the New York Times. On Face Off, the US versus China, we'll explore what's critical to this important global relationship. Trump and Xi Jinping, AI, TikTok, and even Hollywood. New episodes of Face Off are available now, wherever you get your podcasts.
Have you ever gazed in wonder at the Great Pyramid? Have you marveled at the golden face of Tutankhamun? Or admired the delicate features of Queen Nefertiti? If you have, you'll probably like the History of Egypt podcast. Every week, we explore tales of this ancient culture. The History of Egypt is available wherever you get your podcasting fix. Come, let me introduce you to the world of ancient Egypt.
Do you find it hard to sleep at night? Then the Sleep Cove podcast can help you. Hi, I'm Christopher Fitton, the voice and clinical hypnotherapist behind Sleep Cove. Sleep Cove features sleep hypnosis, meditations, and bedtime stories, all designed to help those of you who struggle at night to achieve a restful and peaceful night's sleep. Search for Sleep Cove on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and see why Sleep Cove helps millions of people sleep deeply all night long.